Can M&E building services engineers integrate the results of project analysis with the use of BIM to influence early design decisions? How does the cost of purchasing licenses or upskilling their workforce or absorbing initial setup productivity losses affect the decision of a consultancy company to offer a BIM-based design service? And finally, should BIM modelling skills be invested in a small number of modellers, or should all architects and engineers have the capacity to bolt on BIM expertise to their existing skill sets? So I'd ask you to take about 15 to 20 minutes now to discuss these amongst yourselves at each table, and also to nominate amongst yourselves a speaker for each table to give feedback at the end of
Okay, everyone. At this point, I'd like to open the floor to some of the feedback we've got based on the questions that we asked. And I'd like to ask the table in the middle at the back of the room there if they had any feedback based on the questions that we've asked.
We were saying that for the first question, that the early integration of modelling will influence the overall concept design based by the design team in informing the shape of the actual building itself. And moving on to the second one, based on the current practice sizes and the industry at the moment, we feel that the BIM should attract a fee, and in attracting a fee, it will allow the constant purchase of license and the uptraining of people within the industry. It should not be offered as a service. There should be a fee attached to the BIM modelling and BIM for buildings at the moment. We also feel that based on the fact that you might use BIM, that there should be investment grants for upskilling available to professional teams and professional organisations. In Singapore at the moment, there is a BIM fund that people can draw down from for training. There's no reason why that couldn't be replicated in Ireland and run through the like of SCAI or something like that. We also feel that upskilling the practices would also create jobs and would also lead to lower energy consumption by buildings and lower carbon emissions. In doing that, you're meeting the government's 2020 targets to actually reduce energy. The final one on that was if you upskill the industry in Ireland to use BIM, it will allow us also to trade internationally, but do the actual work in Ireland, which would mean that we will be able to keep our young graduates who are technology knowledgeable in Ireland, and that would also generate more tax revenue from a government point of view. So we would see it as a win-win-win situation right across the board. And then finally, we feel that I think the industry has spoken in relation to whether it should be a small number of modellers or it should be throughout the industry. The number of people attending these meetings, the number of people who are in CITA right across the industry shows that this should not be just kept to a small number, it should be spread right across the industry. I think that is screaming at people. In SIBS, we're involved in other meetings, and we can see we don't get attendances like this at meetings. And just by the people attending this, it shows the interest that's in BIM right across the industry. So that's all we have.
Thanks very much for that, Jim. If I could ask for a follow-up, and if there's any further responses to some of the questions from the table at the front here in the middle, Alan's table.
Well, I'll just talk. The question in relation to question number one, I mean, obviously we see the advantages in the very design decisions on orientation, layouting, natural ventilation strategies, and so we see great advantages in that. We talk about, well, it's kind of someone else's question too, on question 3, We've had this best that within an office, there's a core team trained initially, task force on BIM, and have them then spread the knowledge within the office themselves. Just it's a better way of investing into BIM. Paul, do you want to question two?
Just a question too. We're not only looking at the licenses and the training. Hardware is also an important part, and some practices may not afford to invest in very high spec computers, high spec desktops or laptops. But this is also always quantified against the advantages that BIM will bring to the practice. And I think that was discussed here at last meeting was the BIM maturity. Some tenders will also ask practices to include the number of years that they've been working with BIM. So I'd say that's another important aspect on a decision to be taken whether or not to invest in a BIM product. I'd say practices should move in that direction. And at the last meeting, I was talking to a gentleman who said he invested in a piece of software just because he's very passionate about what he's doing. So I'd say that's another aspect that should be considered.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to follow up in relation to question 1 and ask the question to possibly the table on the left-hand side here. Has this morning's presentation in relation to the workflows that are used or that can be used to transition between concept analysis and detailed design using BIM influenced your current thinking in relation to BIM?
No.
Come on, Jerry, you can do a bit better.
Yes, I suppose it has the extent of BIM and what it can bring to the project. I think as M&E engineers, which I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of this anyway. We do it behind the scenes, we do it, and we may not get issued to deadlines in this format. But I think the speaker earlier spoke about the national construct and all the work I went into that and wasn't really seen. But now the use of BIM and how professional it is, and I think it's a tool that certainly will benefit clients.
Okay, thanks very much. And then follow up on the second question in relation to the investment required in terms of licenses and the workforce and productivity, possibly for the table in the front here. How do you see the cost associated with the hardware and productivity losses fitting in with what you would ordinarily charge clients? Is that something that you're making a long-term investment in, or is that something that you see as being a cost that would be transferred to clients as you build up your BIM expertise?
Well, I mean, I think the cost issue has to be, it's a paradigm that people have to start changing in their minds. The cost of implementing BIM is really negligible compared to the cost of people's time. And if you put it in perspective, I mean, if you buy the best hardware, the best software, the best training, you're probably looking at 15 euros per working day. People spend that on coffee and a sandwich. The cost of technology is not expensive, and I think that's something that the construction industry really has to start changing. The industry as a whole doesn't invest in technology, and they just throw people at a problem. And if we're going to start leading in the world in the adoption of these technologies, I think the whole industry has to have a change in mindset about costs. And so, should it be a cost that you charge on to clients? Like, definitely not. And any client that knows about them knows that BIM is a far more efficient way of working. If you go to a client and say, well, I want to charge you more to work more efficiently, you tend to get lost, and you'll go to the guy who's offering this as the way of working, a better way of working. And that's what people who offer this kind of service as a better way of working are differentiating themselves in the market. And maybe if I could just add on the third question, who should be doing it? Should you have a specialist team or not in your office? And definitely everybody should be working this way. This is the way the industry has moved. 71% of people in the US are working like this. Less than 10% of people in Ireland are working like this. We're really behind the game. Everybody needs to change. And the problem is if you develop a specialist team within your practice or your office, is that you're creating a bottleneck. Then every project depends on a small group of people. And those small group of people will become so valuable they'll end up in somebody else's office. You just need, your whole office just needs to be doing this as the way we do business.
I suppose then a final follow-up to question 3 then for the table at the back on the right-hand side here. Based on current practices in MEP offices and taking into consideration, say, the workload that engineers currently have and going to meetings, doing calculations, doing designs, and the workload that CAT staff would have, how do you see as being a possible way forward in terms of upskilling CAD operators who, in all likelihood, will have to understand the mechanics and dynamics of installing ductwork and pipework and electrical systems in buildings without having any prior experience of it?
I think you need to start off by investing in training 1 or 2 key individuals, plant seeds, basically, and then enable those people to transfer their knowledge as well. You know, a lot of firms, I would imagine, would find it quite difficult to consider or even fund training a lot of people in one go. So if they are finding it difficult in that sense, because of cash flow reasons or whatever, they need to identify individuals that they feel can properly influence, plant that seed, and have that individual impart the knowledge. And then in time, as your cash flow will improve, because you become more efficient, you'll be able to then possibly find your training as well.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. Some very good feedback there from all concerned.